Black Enterprise. Sequoia Blodge, the wonderful Sequoia Blodge.
Hey,
Can you guys make some noise for her? I love this. I love this. I'm gonna sit down with you in a second, but I just feel like you guys are asleep right now.
Yeah, you guys gotta wake
I'm
up.
upset.
We need some energy up in
I'm
here.
upset. I'm upset. I'm on a tour right now across the Midwest. I done hit Pittsburgh, Detroit. Yesterday I was in Cleveland. This is the tour closer. So I'm gonna need you guys to give me some energy right now. There we go. Now, one last thing that I'm gonna sit my behind down. But this morning, I read something. It was an article that said that poverty, on average, takes 20 years to get out of if everything goes right. You guys might have also heard the stat that the median net worth of a black family by 2050 is going to be net negative. And I read that stat and I said, they didn't ask me. Not on my watch. And the reason we're here is because not on our watch. Right? So if we're interested in putting our money where our mouths are at, closing the equity gap, building up this equity, this bread, then I want you guys to make some noise right now, please. All right. All right. We're ready. We're ready.
What's up? You guys give it up one more time for John Henry.
Appreciate you.
All right, so I want to get into all the details that obviously you're doing amazing things, right? But let's start from the beginning. Let's start from when you actually started to develop your company and then ultimately ended up selling it. How did that whole process happen?
Yeah, and I won't spend too much time on the bio here. I think just show of hands, how many of you guys have consumed even one piece of my content ever? Throw them up. Sweet. Okay, cool. Like 35, 40% of the room. Thank you guys. So I won't spend too much time on context. The story's well captured. It's out there. I think the most important thing about myself as a person is that I'm the very, very proud son of immigrant parents.
Yeah.
Who came here from the Dominican Republic, immigrated to Washington Heights, and we grew up broke, but we grew up right. And in the place where is supposedly the most dangerous, i.e. the hood, is where I've felt the most love. And it's also where I've observed what happens to human nature at the extremity, the good way and the bad way. I've seen close friends and family go down the wrong path. I've seen what happens when that exorbitant amount of pressure can create diamonds. I've seen what happens, my pops who press garments for 40 cents a pop growing up, pressing in a dry cleaner in sweatshop conditions in New York City, and my mom who sold super soakers in summertime and who made banging ass seafood and sold it at night to the guys hanging out in the corner. They taught me what resourceful is. And so now, fast forward to modern day context, when I have an entrepreneur come and tell me that if only they had $100,000, they can get their idea off the ground, I'm like, bro, you're not lacking resources, you're lacking resourcefulness.
Yep.
And so all you guys have to know about me in terms of a person is that that's my DNA. And by the way, just like Hove, who stepped into the game and started rapping, and then he peeped it and he was like, oh, I'm not just a rapper. I'm a businessman. I'm not just a businessman. I'm a philanthropist. I'm an activist. And he broke the mold in so many ways. I think he is the modern blueprint. And that's not my words. That's Warren Buffett's words. I think in a similar way, I've stepped into this game. And at first, I was the tech entrepreneur. And then I realized, okay, I'm not even really that good at tech if I'm going to be honest. But what I can do is bring to the table a perspective that most of these folks that I sit down with at the boardroom, they never been there. Mm-hmm. And so once you start understanding that this game is highly contextualized, it's not about what works. So as you go around today in the conference looking for what works, it's not about that. It's about what works for you, right? It's about taking your DNA taking what you're good at, what your team's good at, and doubling down on that, because the moment you play someone else's game, you lose.
Yeah. But how did you go through that process, though? Because, like you said, you're from the hood. It's not like you came up and you were like, all right, entrepreneurship, this is my thing. So how did you know this is the company I want to create and then ultimately sell it?
I'm glad you asked. Again, it wasn't really like that. It wasn't like when I stepped into this game, it's not like I even knew what the word entrepreneur was.
Right.
I was working a damn job. I was a doorman and opening up doors for people, opening up doors for me. And I was there, and there were other doormen who had been there years and didn't know the residents' names. When I stepped in, I was like, oh, I'm going to take these guys' lunch money. Are you kidding me? And so I'm there, and I'm resourceful, and I realize, okay, there's plenty of opportunity. There's plenty of, but it's all about, okay, what opportunity lines up with what activates me? And there was one guy in particular who was also from where I came from, and he said, yo, you have no excuse. If I made it, you got no excuse. And he put me on to this world in which you can get paid for your value, not for your time. And once I caught that bug, you know, and he had, and just for context, for those who don't know, and I talk about this a lot, so that's why I say that, but this brother, he had a franchise of dry cleaners, right? That's how he made his bread, right? 30, 40 dry cleaners. So he told me, yo, I can't give you much, but what I can give you is access to what I've built. So I'll give you access to my facility, and you do what you will with it. Ain't no silver spoon, ain't no, you know, fucking white label paper on product market fit, none of that. Just like, yo, this is what I'm giving you. You make of it what you will. And the entrepreneur, a real entrepreneur by DNA, my humble opinion, is someone who can make a whole lot out of very little. And so that's how I started my first business, you know, was really just going up to other doormen and shaking their hands and saying, hey, I'm a doorman too. I know you're the key to the building. And I know that when residents complain, they come to you. And, you know, if you give them my business card when they complain, then I'll slip you $20. Yes, that's illegal. That's bribing. But, you know, you got to get an edge somehow. And so that built into then I started servicing all the film productions in New York City. So if you guys have ever seen Boardwalk Empire, Law & Order, Person of Interest, White Collar, Amazing Spider-Man 2, Ninja Turtles, Spike Lee, Mike Tyson, any of those productions, those were all, every single piece of wardrobe was processed through my company. And by the way, 18-year-old kid, college dropout, no formal experience, when you find a customer, a $100 million production who has no choice other but to entrust their business to someone with no experience, that tells you you're doing something right. There's riches in niches. Don't go toe-to-toe with everyone else in a sea of competitors. Find your own lane.
That's dope. So from there, you ultimately ended up selling the company.
I did.
And then moving forward, you started Harlem Capital. I mean, that was a whole leap.
Yeah.
Moving forward. But what was that process like for you?
Yeah, okay. I'll explain it like this. I think there's been levels to the things I've been fortunate to learn as my time as an entrepreneur. And I'll get into this to piggyback off of what I was talking earlier about the wealth gap. At some point, I discovered, okay, cool. Step one is getting your earning power up. You got to get your earning power up. And I've discovered that you get your earning power up is directly reciprocal to how good you are at your damn skill. Your skill. Everyone's not going to have the same skill. I happen to be good at this, so this is how I make bread. Matt Hubble is good on the camera. That's how he makes his bread. Savitra has a passion for not-for-profits. That's how she's building her company. Everyone here is their respective skill, and that's what you use to build your income. I realized at some point, as I started making more bread, and no matter how much more bread I was making, I always seemed to not have any. And I was like, okay, well, what's going on here? Maybe the problem is I need to make more. I would make more, and I would still be broke. And then I would look at, how many of you guys look at your bank statements when you have like, say, $500, 1,000, 5Gs, 10Gs, whatever the concentration is, and you look at the bank statement and you're like, yo, how did I end up with like $34 again? And you double check the bank's math.
Listen.
And you're like, yo, something's going wrong. Something's going on here. And so when I sold my business, I put those funds into probably the worst possible second venture that you could start, which is a not-for-profit that makes no money. But it was something that I was passionate about. But now, here's what I want to dial in on. My mom, maybe a year and a half into growing that second business company, not-for-profit, my mom asked me, she said, John, what do you have to show for the fact that you sold your business? And it still gives me chills because I had to look at her in the eyes, and honestly, other than like a cool incubator, nothing. And it felt terrible. It still makes me feel terrible that in that moment I looked at her and I said nothing. And now, mind you, I come from below the poverty line. Both of my parents combined didn't make $30,000 a year. We never owned anything in this country or in the DR, anywhere. And I made a resolve that day that if my mom ever asked me that question again, the answer would never be nothing. So then I learned, oh, okay, concentration of capital ebbs and flows. There's going to be periods where your bread's up. There's going to be periods where you're going through a dry spell. And unless you're a disciplined saver, which I would venture to say most people are not, then that cash is going to go. So if you're going to go broke on dumb shit, then you might as well take that capital and develop the discipline and redirect it into building equity and building assets. And I'll tell you this, I worked briefly for a multi-generational real estate dynasty family out of New York. They control 60,000 apartments in New York City. And when we were driving down Fifth Avenue, it wasn't sightseeing that they were doing. It was like, yo, how's this asset performing? How's that asset performing? And it took me a while, but it clicked. Generational wealth is accrued in assets, is accrued in investments, is accrued in empowering other entrepreneurs to build liquidity. When Rich Dennis sold Sundial Brands to Unilever, what's the first thing he turned around and did? He bought Essence. He bought Madam C.J. Walker's mansion. He's investing in entrepreneurs. Created the New Voices Fund, $100 million fund dedicated to black women. When you get liquidity in the ecosystem, you can propagate that wealth. And so I set that context because I didn't want to go straight into, oh, well, we're a venture capitalist firm and we look for product market fit and market sizing. This is deeper than that. It has to go deeper than that for us because you guys know the stats, 3%, 3 of all venture funding goes to women and minorities. Women and minorities receive 3% of venture capital. In 2017, $84 billion was invested into venture as a whole. In 2018, it's up to $134 billion. This is a growing asset class. It's growing at a ridiculous pace. It's shaping the companies of the future. And you're telling me we get 3%, but we make 70% of the US population? I love when people approach me and they're like, yo, John, like, that's awesome. Like, I'm not on some Mother Teresa stuff.
Right.
Like, that's a business case. I'm betting that we can make products that will speak to us better than someone from outside of our communities. And that's what Harlem Capital is about.
So let's get into that because a lot of black entrepreneurs seek investment, but a lot of us don't know that process. So what exactly are you looking for when it comes to investing in a company?
Yeah. Okay, I'll say it this way. It's interesting. My first business, I raised no money. And I don't know about y'all in the audience, but there's nothing worse than when you're growing your business and you're reading these flashy headlines that 20-something-year-old founder within 6 months raises $15 million and they're right in your industry and you're like, oh, what am I doing wrong? Like, how am I possibly going to win against these people? And you play this comparison game. And I remember running my bootstrap company, a top-funded competitor, Homejoy, raised 38 million. Google, Google Ventures was on board. Washio, Ashton Kutcher was on board. I was like, damn, how am I going to compete against Ashton? All these people were on board. Nas invested, all these folks. And they started dropping their prices. So what I do? I'm dropping my prices. And we kept playing. We were playing a battle, dropping the prices. And I hit that point because I'm bootstrapped and I need to make sure I'm profitable where it didn't make sense for me to go below. I don't know how they were doing their house cleaning services for $19. I tapped out. I was like, yo, I can't play this game. I got back to my game. But now here's where it gets interesting. Maybe a year into it, we were fortunate to sell the business. Not a headline exit by any means, by the way. The moment you stop loving what you do, it's time to fucking exit. You got to have the self-awareness. It's not an L. You got to have the self-awareness to understand that the opportunity cost in this game is really your time. And I see a lot of people continuing their venture that they don't love to do because they don't want to make the general market seem like they failed, but they're miserable running their day-to-day, and they no longer want to do that. So when you get to that point, it's either time for you to flip it, which I was fortunate to, and sometimes if you build something of value, you might be surprised someone's willing to pay for it. Even a small dollar amount, you could turn any exit into a great story. Or you can simply close the doors and try something new. Point is, I exited. A few months later, my creative director shot me a text, and I looked at it, and I had to smile to myself because those same venture-funded competitors closed their doors. And so when you ask what we look for, it's really important to understand that this venture game, it runs deep. You can't replicate these systemic networks that exist. When you go to the Valley, like venture started in the Valley. The first venture firms, Kleiner Perkins, Sequoia, they grew, and then partners from those firms spun out, created their own firms. And, I really don't believe it's like ill-intention, like people sit around and like throw their heads back and laugh and only invest in, like, it's just people just do what they know. People do what they know, and you invest in who you came up with. Like when I get opportunities, I put my homies on. I don't know about y'all. When someone says, yo, I need someone for a panel, I put you guys on. Now, it's different when your hookup is, yo, I got a panel for you versus, yo, I got a $5 million check for you.
Listen.
Do you know what I'm saying? So bringing it all the way back to what we look for, a lot of folks talk about, all the buzzwords, market, and all this other stuff. I think instead of product market fit, I think one thing that we look for is founder product fit.
Right.
Like, are you specifically the right person to be doing this business at this time? Not is this the opportunity of the era. I don't care blockchain in and of itself. I don't care about weed business now that it's hot in a vacuum. I don't care about AI in a vacuum. There's too many people trend chasing. And they'll add the latest trend to their existing business. They could be running a bodega and talk about they're doing AI bodegas. No, you're not. Right? So we look at, okay, is this founder self-aware enough to understand what it is that they're good at? And have they been able to build a team around those competencies and tackle an opportunity that they're really unique for, and also that's relevant to the macro? And that's one area that I can't stress enough. I used to not believe in luck. I used to be like, yo, keep that luck shit in your pocket. But luck plays a role, and what I mean is the macro. We can't shape the macro. That's not the entrepreneur's job. The entrepreneur's job is to respond and adapt and create things within the macro. We can't help if Trump's in office. Well, we could vote. But, there's a lot of macro themes going on. If we would have tried to do Harlem Capital even 5 years ago, it wouldn't have worked. Now, and I want you guys to use your own observations, now you go everywhere and diversity and inclusion is all the rage. The timing is hot.
Right.
There's a lot of macro pressure on organizations to be diverse. And by the way, when there's a lot of macro pressure, downward pressure from the top down, that's a perfect opportunity for all of us in this crowd to create vehicles and companies to try and meet some of those needs from the top down. When you can align yourself to what's going on in the macro with A, self-awareness, and B, a company that makes sense in today's era, if you can align those three, that's when you have a winning recipe.
Hey, clap that up, you guys. So I won't even say recently, probably within the past year or two, made that jump to investing in real estate.
Yes.
So what was that transition like for you?
Yeah, well, I got into real estate because, so before we raised a proper fund for Harlem Capital, we were investing our own bread. And by the way, just for context, like, we were investing really small checks. Like, there's 4 of us at HCP, and each of us were writing like $3,000 checks. And, for us, we treated a $25K check like it was $25 million. So a lot of folks who ask me, yo, how'd you get into investing, will automatically assume for some reason that we started where we are now. But you got to treat step 1 with just as much respect as the end goal. Otherwise, we'll never get there. So important to note, we started by investing small bread. And by the way, that's very annoying to founders because they're like, bro, you're going to put me through all this for $15K? You serious?
You're like, indeed.
And I'm like, yeah, we got to run this diligence. And we would run our diligence, and it's not about the magnitude, it's about the direction, right? So we honed our process early and small. And to your question about how we got into real estate, the point is, we're writing checks, and nothing gets social media going more than venture capital. We live in an era that's weird. It was like, you make 10 million in revenue, crickets. You raise 10 million.
Listen.
TechCrunch, Black Enterprise, you're everywhere.
Don't fault me.
So one thing that I realized, though, is like, all right, cool. These angel investments are getting me a lot of buzz, but they ain't making me no money. And we're probably not going to see money back. And when you invest in a startup, it's a 7 to 10 year horizon for that startup to mature and run its course. I could have invested in Uber and not made $1 until they went public. Right? And so one thing that I've learned and I love that I've learned all of this through my path. Like, my business partners are, classically trained finance guys. Notice I said finance, not finance, because one thing you learn is you have to say finance. Like, there's a lot of soft intangibles in the game of raising capital, and so much of it has to do with how you say it and so forth. But I've learned it through my path so I can communicate it to you guys a little bit differently, hopefully in a way that resonates. So one thing that I've learned is that different capital behaves differently. You can't treat every kind of money like it's the same. Right? And so what I mean by that is, like, for instance, I'm in the TV business now. When I go to LA, I'm on my LA shit. They said, hey, John, it's larger than life. When I go finance, it's suited and booted. When I'm startup, I'm dressed like this. It's, and you have to understand that each capital has different risk tolerance and so forth. And anyway, I ended up discovering that for as much hype as I was getting from venture capital, it doesn't yield any distributions until you exit. In small business, we invested in a few. You get distributions quarterly, i.e. you're getting cash flows as the business grows. But in small business, which is the backbone of America and very important, it's difficult to get to scale because the cost structure is so heavy. So every time you open, you got to get a lease, you got to get new employees, and therefore it's a little burdensome to get to scale. Well, then I saw real estate, and I realized this is where I have 80% of my personal money at the moment. I love it as an equity building tool. And there's a reason why, if you study wealth, people park their cash in real estate. And nothing felt better. I told y'all my mom didn't have anything growing up. Nothing felt better than I saved up enough dough and I bought my first building. And I said, Mama, we don't need a single family home. We got cash flow. Now we own an asset. My equity, i.e. cash, when you transfer your cash into an asset, it converts into equity. Different equity behaves differently. We talked about that. Startup equity has the potential to go like this or like this. Small business more like this. Real estate is stable, but the thing I like about real estate is that equity, that principal is protected. it's growing slowly over time, and on top, it's shooting off cash flows. And to make matters more interesting, the bank has a very special relationship with real estate than it does with small businesses. When I was running my laundry business, we had contracts for $50,000 a month, and they still wouldn't give me no loan for $50,000. I'm like, bro, what's going on? And I learned to understand that the bank, they just have their own risk profile. They don't know about laundry. They don't know about cosmetics. They're not trying to get into all that. But what they do know if you have real estate is that if you don't make your payments, they at least have that asset. Right? So now I'm walking you guys through my thought process, and you guys can see my understanding has elevated beyond just, I'm doing a startup. Once you start understanding on the macro, capital infusion and how it works, assets, banking, small business, venture, how it all fits together, media is a massive machine that you can get working for you if you just create your own content instead of waiting for people to write about you. Once you can get all these gears and you can get them working for you, you're just a small cog, and you'd be damned to think if you're going to change the system, but if you can get it working in your favor, your likelihood of success is increased. So now I have this equity in this real estate, and then I learned on top of that the bank will now give me a loan based off this asset that I have to buy another one.
Yes.
And I was like, bro, this is the information that has been reserved for the privileged for centuries. I wish you could zoom in and see these chills, man. Centuries. And the fact that I get to play a small part and come here and share some of this, like, have you guys ever come across a truth and you're like, someone's got to know. And you're just like, I discovered this thing. Like, that's how I feel right now. It's just been 2-3 years that I've been on that. I've been starting companies for 8 years. It's only been in the last 2 that I'm really starting to understand the kind of the equity piece on top for real. And I am so passionate about making sure that black and brown folks participate in the upside of their communities, because I'll tell you what, I'm traveling, as I said, Detroit. I've been to a lot of places just in the past week, 5 cities, 4 days, and even just in general. There's a lot of communities that are popping right now, but you know what? It doesn't matter if you're not participating in the upside. These communities pop, and if you don't have equity, guess what? You're getting priced out. And you'll move to the outskirts, and guess what? The outskirts will pop, and guess what? If you don't have equity there, you're getting priced out. We're going to end up in fucking Omaha. So you know what I'm saying? And if you don't got the bread alone, you can combine a few homies and put the equity piece up and understand that the bank loans you 80%. So that's the tip I'm on right now.
Whew. We got 2 minutes. I could be up here with you all day. I'm over here taking notes in my head mentally. Okay, so we're going to wrap this up so I can get to Q&A for you guys. Last thing, content. You touched upon that a little bit. Why is it so important that you develop your own content?
It's important because context matters so much. It's gotten to the point for me now where I can step into a room and have the majority of the room or half of the room or even any percentage of the room have context on who you are and what you do, then the conversation is less introducing yourself and it's more about, let's get to work. What can we do together? That's what I find so enriching, context. So we live in a world now where we're at a height of consuming peer-generated content. It's not even about quality anymore. In fact, stats suggest that if the video is too high quality, people tune out. My highest performing videos is this. And so if you're going to be here all day, and by the way, I love consuming my peers' stuff because that's who I rock with really is my peers. My peers is who I have tremendous respect for and who we should all have tremendous respect for. So yeah, I'm supporting my homies, but I'll be damned if I'm not also going to be a producer. And I think people get tripped up because they're like, I don't know enough to produce. All you got to do is share your journey. And if you stop front and alleviate this pressure to be a guru and just say, I don't really know what I'm doing, but I'm on this journey. I'm going to find out. Come learn through me. Come learn with me. People are not after perfection. They love the process. And if you can deliver that process, and if you can incorporate those dynamics that we just talked about, content, and you can pair it with whatever your hustle is, your venture gets amplified. It's the execution, which is the growing the business and can't be ignored, but it's also the storytelling. And they're two different skill sets, and you have to flex them both if you want to be good at them.
So clap it up. All right, so we're going to take some quick questions from the audience. I believe there are mic runners somewhere. Oh, right there. Okay, perfect. So if you guys have a question, go ahead and put your hand up, and somebody will run the mic to you.
Okay. Good morning. My name is Cameron Fontaine. My company is Fontaine Concierge. I'm a bespoke clothier and menswear stylist.
What's up, Cameron?
And what's up? My question is more about capital. A lot of times we hear about, especially as a small business owner, we hear about financial capital and funding capital and how to raise money. But in my business, I find my need is not necessarily raising money, but also raising that networking and social capital, because I offer a high-end product, and a lot of times I'm told that in my community it's not necessarily the price point are not necessarily my target, but I want to, where are the opportunities or any strategies to kind of build a network around social capital that allows me to offer and promote my product that way, because I also need clients.
I got you.
Funding.
Good question. Social capital. Look, the answer is simple. The answer is content. And I could just leave it at that one word, but I'll elaborate.
You're like, done.
Right? So this game is about leverage, and you either have it or you don't. Now, if you come from a zip code or a last name, then cool, you're born with leverage. Use that. If not, for like 99% of us who aren't, then you have to create that leverage. For example, people only give a shit about what I have to say now because I had the show on Vice. Before then, it's because I had this podcast on Washington Post. Before then, I had this podcast on eBay. Before then, I had a meetup. Before the meetup, I had nothing. Right? And so it's like, can you, using whatever your interests are, skills, can you create the first, right? It's like you need a Trojan horse to get into the game. You use your skill to get into the game, and right now, content is an excellent way to do that. Why? Because people love being interviewed, i.e., see what's happening here, right? People love being interviewed. So if I were you, I would create a content series, a video podcast, not that expensive to put up, brand it, call it something cool, start reaching out to people in your in your desired market to be in, and you start having them on your show. And from that piece of content that you create with them, you create a bunch of different micro pieces of content, blog posts, tweets, what have you. You can take one 40-minute video and create 40 pieces of content. And now all of a sudden, you're disseminating information, and when you put content out, you allow people to develop an opinion about who you are and what you do. All of a sudden, you're creating this context, and that's social capital. Over time, if you're foolish, you cash it in for pennies. If you're wise, you build your social capital. You never ask for favors. You build it. And eventually you get to the point where your social capital starts positioning you for opportunities that you wouldn't even have imagined that you could do when you started. Does that help?
Nice.
Thank you for sharing. But my question is, how do you avoid the calamity around you and focus on your hustle?
I love that. I don't avoid the calamity around me. I don't avoid the chaos. Like people, look guys, I don't know. There's a bunch of really neatly packaged tips for how to deal with life. I'm not one of those people. Like for me, we're in the world that we're living in. For me, I didn't avoid when Nipsey Hussle got shot. I drew from that. Rest in peace. I didn't avoid that. You don't avoid what's going on in Sudan. You don't avoid what's going on in the news. You don't avoid the fact that undocumented immigrants are being treated like they're not even people. And that's how my parents came in, by the way. You don't avoid that. You draw from that. These are the issues that are pertinent and relevant and contextualized to our community. So if we tune it out, then who's going to tune it in? We need to be building off of that, incorporating into our being, to our narrative, into how we message. That's what gives us the edge.
Last question.
Good morning, John. How are you?
Morning.
Awesome. So I'm Connie S. Falls. I create systems for creative entrepreneurs. What I want to know is what system are you using on the back end of your business, whether it's CRM, whether it's different policies and procedures, on the back end of the business side of all the different businesses that you run?
Yeah, we just run our business off of Google Drive. Yeah, we do.
The end.
You know, it's a lot of Google searching, but also like G Drive, like, you know, nothing particularly fancy. You could get a lot of mileage off of some simple tools, I tell you. I met a lot of people with crazy sophisticated systems, and I'm like, yo, do you ever pick up the phone and get a customer? You know, so for as much like emphasis as there's placed on tech, which by the way has its role and is important, I think what's more important is doing the less fancy stuff. That's when you internalize the learnings. That's when you develop that DNA that can never be taken away from you. So when you get to the point in your development, which might not be right now, where you finally are ready for some sophisticated tech, it's not going to be synthetic. It's not going to be like, oh yeah, I'm doing this. It's going to be like, all right, cool, I'm intimately familiar with what I'm doing, and here's how I'm going to amplify that.
Yeah. Do things that are unscalable until you get to the point of scale.
That's right.
All right, so you guys give John
Wait,
Henry.
One second.
Wait, hold on.
So
Pause me.
I've been
What's up?
doing this
What's
thing.
up?
I want your guys' help with it, all right? This is the tour closer, I told y'all. Now, we've done this in every one of these cities, Pittsburgh, Detroit, Cleveland. I want the most noise from y'all, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to cue you guys. I'm going to say 1, 2, 3, and on 3, we're going to say Queen City Hustles. And then afterwards, I want you guys to make ridiculous noise like I'm Oprah and I just gave you a car. All right? And it's a bit of a competition. Detroit stepped up. I'm not going to lie, Detroit showed crazy love. Cleveland was a smaller room. Yeah, shout out to the D. Cleveland was smaller, but man, Cleveland's got crazy heart. Pittsburgh was not on the map. Sorry, you guys. So I'm going to prompt you guys, and we're going to go crazy, all right? Ready? All right, guys. Last stop of the tour. People want to know if Queen City hustles. Let's find out. 1, 2, 3. Queen City hustles! Oh, shit. Thank you, guys.
That's what's up. Give John Henry one more round of applause, you guys.
Thank you, guys.